She put her last dollar on the counter with both hands. Not dropped. Placed. The way you place something when every cent behind it is already gone, and the only thing left is how you carry yourself while it leaves. Thomas Hale looked at the coin. He looked at her face, chin up, eyes dry, the particular stillness of a woman who has decided that pride is the one thing left that belongs entirely to her, and she is not surrendering it in a general store in Millhaven, Colorado, in front of a man she barely knows. He picked up the dollar. He held it back out to her. She did not take it. End of month, he said. Same as before. That was when she broke. Not loudly. Not with drama. Her chin dropped half an inch, and her shoulders moved once, hard, with the effort of containing something that had been contained for too long, and her hand came up to her face, and she turned from the counter. 3 months of careful math. 3 months of circled lists and edited orders, and a daughter who asked for nothing because she had learned her mother's way of wanting things. All of it held. And then one man handed back a dollar and said 4 words, and the wall came down in the one place she had not thought to reinforce. He did not look away. He did not manufacture a reason to be somewhere else and give her the mercy of unwatched grief. He let it be what it was. He put the dollar in the drawer beneath the register, finished filling her order without commentary, and when her daughter came in from the porch, he held out the candy jar without being asked because the girl always took the peppermint ones, and he had been keeping them on the left side of the jar since the second Wednesday. He had not told anyone that. He would not understand until much later what that moment had cost her, or what handing back a dollar had put in motion. Millhaven, Colorado. September of 1881. Thomas Hale was 46 years old and had run the general store on Millhaven's main street for 11 years. He had built it from a single room and a handshake loan into something real. 2 rooms, a covered porch, a reputation for fair dealing that was worth more in a small Colorado town than the inventory behind it. He kept clean accounts. He extended credit carefully and collected it without apology because both halves of that mattered equally, and he had seen what happened to men who forgot the second half. He ate alone at a table built for 2. He made 1 cup of coffee every morning. The store opened at 7 and closed at 6, and in the hours between Thomas Hale was competent and present and located at a distance from everything that was not the work. His wife had left 8 years ago, not died, left. On a Tuesday morning while he was opening the store, a stage to Denver and a letter folded in quarters on the kitchen table. He read it 3 times, put it in the drawer beneath the register, and opened the store the next morning at 7 because the alternative was sitting in a kitchen alone with a letter, and he had never been a man who sat when there was standing to be done. The town had formed its opinions. He had let them stand. 8 years. 1 cup of coffee. A table with 2 chairs. One of them never pulled out. He had organized his life around precision and correctness and the reliable management of distance, and he had been at that distance long enough that he had stopped feeling it as distance at all. He called it practicality. He had almost convinced himself that was accurate. Alma Voss had arrived in Millhaven 6 weeks before she walked through his door. She came from somewhere east with a 7-year-old daughter and a deed to the old Prentice property 2 miles south of town. 40 acres that had been empty 3 years and needed more work than most people would have taken on alone. She was 38 years old. Widowed 3 years, since a fever took her husband on a cold March morning without negotiating. She had taken the time she needed and then made a decision about what kind of woman she was going to be going forward. The decision had produced this: a woman who fixed her own fences, drove her own cattle prices at market, kept her own accounts with the precision of someone who understood that the margin between enough and not enough was not theoretical, but daily and required daily attention. She did not ask for help she did not need. She did not perform struggle for sympathy. She moved through difficulty the way water moves through rock, not dramatically, just persistently, finding the path that opens. What the town did not know, because she had not told it, was how close the season had come to breaking her. The property had taken everything she arrived with. The repairs took the rest. The first yield came in short. The second planting, her contingency, the thing she had put in the ground specifically against this possibility, had gone in with full faith in September and come out 11 days ago under an early frost that arrived without warning and did not leave anything behind worth harvesting. She had $4.60. A daughter who asked for nothing. And 3 weeks until the next possible income. She came into the store on a Wednesday morning with a list and Nettie beside her. She put the list on the counter and looked at Thomas Hale with the direct steadiness of a woman who has calculated the cost of asking and concluded it is less than the cost of not asking. 2 weeks of credit. She would settle in full when the month-end yield came in. He looked at the list. Flour, salt, coffee, lamp oil. 3 items circled in pencil, the ones she would remove if the credit did not stretch that far. She had already made his decisions for him. She had stood in her kitchen that morning and edited herself down to the minimum before she came and asked for it, had already done the math on what she could justify requesting and what she could not, and had drawn small circles around the things that were negotiable, so he would not have to ask. That detail went into him and stayed. He filled the order. All of it, circled items included. He wrote her name in the ledger and said end of month, and she said end of month, and neither of them made more of it than it was. The girl looked up at him from beside the counter with the evaluating gravity of a child who has learned to read adults quickly because the information is useful. He held out the candy jar, peppermints on the left, lemon drops on the right, the afternoon light catching the peppermints in a way that made them glow slightly amber. She looked at them with the seriousness of someone making a real decision, selected one peppermint, took it with both hands, and said thank you with a weight that made clear she was not performing the words, but delivering them. Alma gave him a quick look when the girl said that. Less than a second. Something in it that was not gratitude exactly, and not surprise exactly. Something more careful than either, the look of a woman who is filing something away in a place she will return to. They left. He went back to his accounts and told himself it was a standard credit arrangement. He had 20 of them in the ledger. He told himself this twice. Once is enough for something simply true. The following Wednesday, she came in for lamp oil and thread, practical thread, the heavy kind, for something that needed mending rather than something that needed making. She paid for the oil with exact change she had clearly set aside for the purpose, and he added the thread to the account without discussion. She had her economy, and he had learned to work within it without drawing attention to the working. She used exactly the words the situation required. No more, no less. She accepted what was given without minimizing it and without excess thanks, and she left when the business was done, and the bell above the door sounded once in the quiet store. He stood at the counter after she left and examined the accounts in front of him without reading them. 2 weeks later, he was repairing the south fence behind the store. It had been soft since May, and he had been meaning to get to it since June, when he heard a wagon on the road. He looked up. Alma Voss coming back from somewhere, Nettie asleep against her shoulder in the seat, the wagon moving at the unhurried pace of a woman who has been somewhere necessary and is now going home. She saw him at the fence. She did not wave. She nodded once, the clean acknowledgement of a person who notices a thing without requiring the noticing to become a production. He nodded back. He drove a post into the ground and did not think about the 3 circled items on a list and the woman who had done his math for him before she walked through his door. He thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. The first Thursday of October she came in and settled the account. Exact to the cent, set on the counter with the quiet satisfaction of a debt discharged. He wrote paid in the ledger. She watched him write it with the attention of someone for whom that word in that book carried real weight. Thank you, she said. 2 words. No performance around them. He said it was no trouble. She took Nettie and they went out, and the store went quiet. 4 minutes later, Martha Cole appeared from the millinery with the pretext of needing buttons. Martha Cole always needed buttons when something worth discussing had recently walked past her window. 3 weeks running, Martha said, examining a cart of bone buttons she was not going to purchase. That Voss woman. She had an account. She settled it. Clean to the cent, I expect. Martha set the buttons down. She turned down both Henderson boys last month. Offered help with the barn repair, and she thanked them and sent them home. A pause with weight in it. She's the kind that only asks when she genuinely has to. And when she does ask, she means every syllable of it. She bought 4 buttons, her minimum for a visit with credibility, and left. Thomas stood at the counter and looked at the main street of Millhaven through the front window and thought about a woman who had already edited herself before she came to ask, who had drawn small pencil circles around the things she was willing to give up, who said 2 words of thanks and meant them the way most people mean 10. He told himself he was thinking about a customer. He was a man who kept clean accounts. He knew when a number did not add up. The second frost came on a Monday. She came in that afternoon, and he knew before she reached the counter. Her face was composed, the jaw set, the eyes clear, but there was something in the way she was carrying herself that had not been there on any previous Wednesday, a particular quality of effort in the composure, the way a person looks when they are working harder than usual to look the same. She put a small order on the counter, the smallest yet. When he reached for the ledger, she said, quietly, "I'd like to pay today. $1 silver." She said it with both hands, the way you set down something you cannot afford to lose. The order came to $1.40. He picked up the coin. He held it out. She looked at his hand. Something moved across her face, controlled and quick. "I pay my debts," she said. The words came out harder than she intended, the way true things sound when they have been held under pressure and finally find a direction. "I know you do," he said. End of November. The wall came down. Not loudly. Not with drama. Her chin dropped, and her hand came up to her face, and her shoulders moved once with the effort of holding in something that had already escaped. She turned from the counter. He did not look away, and he did not pretend. He put the dollar in the drawer next to a letter he had kept for 8 years, and finished filling her order, and when the bell above the door sounded and Nettie came in from the porch, he held out the jar. She went directly to the peppermints on the left side without hesitation, which meant she had been noticing them and had not asked. Alma turned back. Her eyes were dry. But there was something in her face that had not been there on any other Wednesday, something that had been held behind the composure all this time, patient and contained, and was now simply present. She looked at him, not the quick filing look, something longer, something that said, "I see what you are, and I will not forget this." The bell sounded once above the door. The store went quiet. He stood at the counter and was honest with himself for the first time in 8 years about what the quality of that silence meant. Before we go on, if this story is speaking to you, hit like and drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's get back, because Thomas Hale is about to ride 2 miles with no excuse prepared and no idea what he's going to say when he gets there. He went on a Saturday morning. No delivery, no account to settle, no reason that would survive examination. He had considered inventing one and decided against it because she was a woman who would identify an invented reason in the first sentence, and he had no interest in starting something with a dishonesty underneath it, however small. He rode south with his hat and stopped at her gate. The latch needed a new pin. He saw it before he saw anything else, because that was how he was built, the way some men read sky and others read cattle, and Thomas Hale read the things that needed fixing before he read anything else. He was still on his horse when she came around the side of the barn with a fence tool in her hand and stopped. The Colorado morning held them. Mountains to the west with their first winter on the high faces. Air cold and clean, carrying the particular smell of a season that has made its decision. A hawk making slow circles above the south pasture with the patience of something that knows exactly what it is waiting for. "The latch on your gate needs a new pin," he said. She looked at the gate. She looked at him. "I know," she said. "I have the hardware." She waited. She was the kind of woman who waited rather than prompted, who understood that men say the actual thing eventually, if you give them sufficient space to arrive at it. "You rode 2 miles to tell me about a latch pin," she said. "No," he said. The hawk turned another circle. The mountains held their snow. He looked at his hat, which he was holding in both hands, without having decided to. "I have been sitting behind that counter for 8 years, he said. "I've gotten efficient at a great many things and entirely useless at this particular one." A pause. "I would like to come by on Sundays. Not to fix anything. To sit on the porch and drink coffee and talk about whatever is worth talking about." Nettie appeared in the barn doorway, took in the man on the horse, the fence tool in her mother's hand, the general shape of what was happening. She went back inside. The tact of a child who has been paying attention. Alma Voss looked at Thomas Hale across the yard. The mountains behind him. The hawk above the pasture. A morning that had the quality of something that has been waiting to happen. "I make bad coffee," she said. "I've had bad coffee before." The corner of her mouth moved. Gone before it fully arrived. "Sunday," she said. "After church." He fixed the latch before he left. He could not have done otherwise. The Sundays became a thing. Not quietly, nothing in Millhaven was quiet, but steadily, without announcement, the way two careful people move toward each other when they have both been careful long enough to know that careful is not the same as protected. They talked on the porch while Nettie worked at her schoolbook inside. He told her about the letter in the drawer, 8 years of not telling anyone, and then one Sunday afternoon he simply told her, without building toward it, and she received it the way she received everything, completely, without filling the spaces he left. She told him about her husband, a thorough man, a good one, gone from a thing that could not be helped. About the decision she had made afterward about what kind of woman she was going to be. About 11 towns she had considered before Millhaven, and why Millhaven had finally looked like ground that might hold. She was not looking for rescue. He had known that since the first Wednesday. She was looking for somewhere to stop. He had stopped 8 years ago and called it enough. He was beginning to understand, in the particular way you understand things that have been true for a while before you are ready to look at them directly, that stopped and enough were not the same thing. A man named Garrett came by the store in November. Prosperous, recently widowed, the kind of man who understood the value of being seen to be prosperous and made sure you understood it too. He had seen Alma at the church social and found reasons to be in the general store on the 2 Wednesdays she came in. He was pleasant. He was attentive in the practiced way of a man who has done this before and considers himself good at it. He told her the Prentice property was ambitious for one person. He said it like a compliment. He said he knew people who could help with the heavy work, the kind of help that came without obligation, just neighborly concern. Alma thanked him. She picked up her order and left. Thomas watched this from the far end of the counter, where he was doing inventory that did not require the degree of attention he was giving it. He said nothing. That evening he closed the store and stood on the porch in the November cold for longer than the temperature warranted, looking at the South Road. And then he went inside and made 1 cup of coffee and sat at the table with 2 chairs and looked at the chair that was always empty and understood something he had been understanding in pieces for 3 months. He asked her in December at the gate with the new latch pin. The mountains had their full winter. The creek behind her barn had gone silent under ice. He stood at the gate he had fixed in October and said the thing plainly, the way he said all things that mattered. "I know what you built here and what it cost you," he said. "I have no interest in diminishing it. I want to build alongside it if you'll have me. I've been alone for 8 years and I told myself that was enough, and I was wrong about that, and I would like to stop being wrong about it now." She was quiet, considering, not hesitating. He had learned the difference. "Nettie," she said. "She takes the peppermints from the left side of the jar," he said. "I've been keeping them there since October." She looked at him. This man in front of her gate in December with his hat in his hands, who had been paying attention since the first Wednesday, to the circled items on a list, to the way a girl held candy with both hands, to a latch pin on a gate he had no business noticing, who had handed back $1 without making it generous, who had ridden 2 miles on a Saturday with no excuse and told the truth about why. "Yes," she said. 1 word. It was everything required. They married in February on a Saturday, when the worst of winter had decided to move on. Millhaven filled the church because Millhaven was the kind of town that shows up for the things that matter, and this, a man stepping back from 8 years of closed distance, a woman who had built something real from 40 hard acres and a failed season, this the town had decided mattered considerably. Martha Cole sat in the 3rd pew with the composed satisfaction of a woman whose instincts have been running ahead of the evidence for 4 months and have now been fully confirmed. Reverend Miles kept the ceremony short because both parties had communicated a preference for brevity, and he had learned over 20 years that the shorter ceremonies were often the truer ones. Alma walked down the aisle in dark green, the color of Colorado pines in winter, because she dressed for herself and always had. Thomas stood at the front of the church and watched her come toward him and thought about a silver dollar placed on a counter with both hands, about a chin that stayed up even when everything underneath it had given way, about a drawer with 2 things in it now, a folded letter he no longer needed to keep, and a coin that had been there since September. Nettie sat beside Martha Cole, peppermint candy in both hands, watching her mother walk toward the man at the front of the church with the serious full attention of a child who understands that what is happening is permanent and important, even if the complete weight of it will only be available to her years from now. What followed was built from honest materials and daily choosing. The store and the 40 acres run as two things that informed each other. The accounts reorganized within the first month by Alma because she was better with numbers and both of them knew it, and neither of them made anything of the knowing. Sunday mornings on the porch that had been the place where the things worth saying got said, and remained that place because some habits are worth keeping. Nettie grew up quick and direct and perceptive, with her mother's gift for economy and a talent for reading people she had been developing since the age of 7. She had made her decision about Thomas before her mother had. On the first Wednesday, when he held out the jar without making it a transaction, without the slight performance that adults sometimes put into small kindnesses to ensure they are noticed. He had just held it out. She had filed that away in the place marked, "This one means it." Their son arrived 3 years on. They named him James for Thomas's father, who had told a 12-year-old boy once that the only things worth keeping were the ones that required you to become better than you had been in order to keep them. On an evening in the 5th autumn of their marriage, Thomas came in from closing the store to find the lamp on, Alma at the table with the ledger, Nettie across from her with her schoolbook, the boy asleep in the corner chair with his cheek against the armrest and his mouth slightly open. The kitchen smelled of wood smoke and supper and the specific warmth of a room that is full in a way that has nothing to do with how many people are in it. Alma looked up when he came through the door. That quick look, the same one she had given him on the first Wednesday, carrying now something entirely different than it had carried then. He hung up his coat. He sat down at the table. He thought about a coin placed with both hands, and a moment that had lasted 30 seconds, and the drawer beneath the register where the letter still sat, but the dollar did not. Thomas Hale almost took that dollar. He had every reasonable justification for doing so. A ledger. A system. 11 years of fair dealing built on the principle that accounts balance and credit is not charity. The correct thing, the expected thing, the clean thing, was to take the coin, note the balance, complete the transaction. He had been doing the correct thing for 8 years. He had built his life around it. He had confused correctness with presence and precision with being all right, and he had been at that confusion long enough that he could no longer see it as confusion. Most of us have a version of that counter. It is not always wood and glass. Sometimes it is the careful way we hold ourselves at the appropriate distance from someone who might need more than seems practical to give. The offer we do not make. The question we do not ask. The moment we let pass because engaging with it fully would cost us something we have decided we cannot afford. We keep the accounts clean and call it being sensible, and do not examine too closely what we are keeping the accounts in place of. Thomas picked up that dollar and held it back out, and did not know he was changing the direction of 3 lives. He was just a man who looked at the last thing someone had and decided his ledger could wait until November. You cannot always know which small thing will turn out to carry weight. You cannot see, in the moment, that the moment has a long tail. But you can pay attention. You can keep the peppermints on the left side of the jar for a child who noticed and did not ask. You can fix the latch before you leave. You can ride 2 miles on a Saturday with no excuse prepared and say the true thing when you get there. It costs less than you think. It is worth more than any ledger you will ever keep. If this story gave you something, hit like and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Until next time, keep writing.